Chapter 8, Part 6, Theories of Emotion, Explaining Emotion. The James Lange Theory of Emotion. Do you run because you are afraid, or are you afraid because you run? American psychologist William James and Danish psychologist Carl Lange proposed a similar theory at about the same time, a theory now known as the James Lange Theory of Emotion. This theory holds that emotions arise from the perception of body changes. James believed that emotion followed this sequence. We perceive a stimulus, physiological and behavioral changes occur, which we experience as a particular emotion. Walter Cannon challenged the James Lange theory, criticizing it on several grounds. Cannon pointed out that bodily reactions are similar for many emotions, yet our subjective experience of various emotions is very different. Cannon argued that our emotional reaction to a stimulus is often faster than our physiological reaction. Artificially inducing physiological changes does not necessarily produce a related emotional experience. James had proposed that if a person were cut off from feeling body changes, he would not experience true emotions. Studies of people with spinal cord injuries do not support this idea. New research provides support for the James Lange theory. Antonio Damasio's findings that each basic emotion produced a distinct pattern of brain activity and that these changes occurred before they were interpreted as an emotion support the theory. Support is also provided by research on the facial feedback hypothesis, the view that expressing a specific emotion, especially facially, causes the subjective experience of that emotion. When people mimic the facial expressions characteristic of a given emotion, they tend to report feeling that emotion. The basic explanation for this is that facial muscles send feedback signals to the brain, which uses the information to activate and regulate emotional experience. Cognitive theories of emotion. The two-factor theory of emotion is Stanley Schechter and Jerome Singer's theory that emotion is the result of the interaction of physiological arousal and the cognitive label that we use to explain the arousal. This theory stimulated a lot of research, but it received little support. The cognitive mediational theory of emotion, developed by Richard Lazarus, asserts that emotions result from the cognitive appraisal of a situation's effect on personal well-being. According to Lazarus, all other components of emotion, including physiological arousal, follow the initial cognitive appraisal. Some critics of this theory argue that emotional reactions to a stimulus or event are virtually instantaneous, too rapid to allow for the process of cognitive appraisal. They suggest that we feel first and think later. Complex stimuli must be cognitively appraised before an emotion is generated. For simple stimuli, emotional responses such as fear can be virtually instantaneous, bypassing conscious consideration. This ends this part of Chapter 8 and the conclusion of Chapter 8.